that his limbs are quivering, mouth is drying up, body is trembling, and a couple of 3 to 4 verses where he continues to say about his physical conditions. And finally, he says that he doesn't want to fight or he doesn't see anything good in this battle because he sees some adverse omens and all. So, in connection to that, we saw a bit on our subconscious mind and the things on auto suggestions and hetero suggestions and how do they work, and also about the placebo and the nocebo effect. We will continue with the next verse and see what our hero is going to do. न काङ्क्षे विजयं कृष्ण न च राज्यं सुखानि च किं नो राज्येन गोविन्द किं भोगैर्जीवितेन वा. So he is now explaining to Krishna again. He says, "For I desire not victory, O Krishna, nor kingdom, nor pleasures. Of what avail is dominion to us, O Govinda? Of what avail pleasures or even itself?" So he says that what should I look forward to? This kingdom, pleasures, and what is the use of fighting? So here he addresses Krishna as Govinda. Govinda is one who gives pleasure to the land or cows or senses. Here they are using it, or Arjuna addressing to the sense, in the sense that Arjuna wants now to fulfill his desire. He desires that he should not fight the war, and he is putting forth a lot of things, meaning that he is trying to give lot of reasons for not fighting the wars, and it is a desire which comes from your senses. And here Govinda, Krishna is addressed as Govinda as he being the person who gives pleasure to the senses. Arjuna is indirectly conveying that Govinda or Krishna should give a pleasure to what he is desiring at this point of time. So that is the significance of Lord Krishna being addressed here as Govinda. And when he says all this, Krishna still maintains perfect silence. He doesn't reply anything. And he maintains perfect objectivity. So he is just letting Arjuna tell whatever he wants to tell, and he is silent, listening to what Arjuna is telling. And because he is silent, Arjuna starts giving more and more reasons for why he doesn't want to fight the war. And this is the thing that we need to understand here. So when a person is emotional and starts talking in the emotional state, if you abrupt them in the middle, they will not be in a state to listen what you are saying because they still are emotional. So when a person is emotional, when you can expect that person to understand or to listen to what you are really conveying is when that person has totally come out of that emotional state. And here that's the reason Krishna still maintains silence and Arjuna still goes on giving his own reasoning. So Arjuna was a Kshatriya, he was a true warrior. He has claimed many victories to the credit and he has conquered many kingdoms. That's why he is called as Dhananjaya, because he is a winner of wealth. And now he is saying that he doesn't want any pleasures of the world, or he doesn't want. But before, if you see, he conquered all of that, and his name itself signifies he is Dhananjaya. He is the conqueror of wealth. So understand the contradiction that he is giving to his personality. His personality as such is given a name. He is conqueror of wealth. And in this verse, he says that he doesn't want any pleasures by winning this war. And all these are coming because of his emotions. And his intellect is clouded. Being the Vasana, being the innate nature of Arjuna, to be a warrior, to go around, win, and to be happy after winning. Now that personality of Arjuna has got clouded because of his emotions, and he is not showing his true self, what is his innate nature. Instead of showing his innate nature, he is actually trying to show or give reasons which are not suited to his nature. येषामर्थे काङ्क्षितं नः राज्यं भोगा सुखानि च तैमेव स्थिता युद्धे प्राणां त्यक्त्वा धनानि च. आचार्याः पितरः पुत्राः तथैव च पितामहाः मातुलाश्वसुराः पौत्राः श्याला सम्बन्धिनस्तथा. So in this shloka, he is saying that why should I get the kingdom, enjoyment, pleasures, everything in this battle, and renouncing the life and wealth. And in the next verse, he brings the point that, sorry, he's saying that he is going to kill all his teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, whoever are there in the battlefield. They are all going to die. And after they all have gone in the battlefield, what is that I am going to get? For whose sake do I need to desire the kingdom? When we see the start of Kurukshetra, what was the reason for this war? Why did this war come? Why did this Kurukshetra start? Anyone answering? What was the start of Kurukshetra? I think everyone are muted.
Yeah, this is for the kingdom only. Yeah, they fought for the kingdom to get
But
the
what,
whole.
yeah, what was the intent for getting the kingdom? It was for the kingdom, but what was the intent for getting the kingdom?
To
It
get
was
the power,
not actually to
There
get the
was a
power, to get
revenge
the
also.
to
revenge was
defend.
not actually the reason for the war. Actually, the reason for the war, if you see, was Kauravas being not righteous. They did not give their share of kingdom, which
Okay.
Pandavas were supposed to get. So
So
the
it's the
trigger
fight
for
of
this
dharma and
war,
adharma. Yeah.
yes, the war started because it wanted to be a fight between dharma and adharma to establish
Okay.
dharma or the righteousness. And that's the very, very first word we say in the stanza 1, Dharma Kshetre. Why Kurukshetra is called a Dharma Kshetra? Because it is the place where we are trying to establish the dharma. I hear a background noise. I don't know who. Can you go on mute, please? Okay. So here, our hero now starts saying what? He's saying that, why should I win this war now when no one is there? Doesn't he know that when he comes into the war, if the other one is going to be killed, and then only they are going to get the kingdom? If they want their kingdom back, they have to fight the battle, and the other side should lose, then only they will get back. Or these people have to die if they don't get the kingdom. And now why is Arjuna feeling that after he wins the war, after he gets the kingdom, with whom will I enjoy this kingdom? This is the place where he is bringing up all the emotions of I. I meaning that it is not for the righteous thing he is talking. He's not talking like a Kshatriya. He is now just talking in terms of his own personal desires. So Arjuna argues the purpose of gaining victory is to enjoy the pleasures of kingdom with his relatives and friends. So is this battle fought for enjoyment? No. The reason for starting this battle was not at all enjoyment. It was for the establishment of dharma, or to get back their rightful share of kingdom, which Pandavas were entitled to. But here he takes a different stance in the sense that Arjuna, if you see as a person, he is a person who really likes a lot of praises. He's a person who likes a lot of praises. Because of that, he is looking that after he wins the kingdom, he has to have some person to praise him. So Dronacharya, Bhishma, everyone will be able to praise. Then only he will be able to enjoy. So his enjoyment is coming because of other people praising. Or if he stops this battle, they will speak good about him. Bhishma and Drona will speak good about him. So that is the sole reason that he is saying that he doesn't want or he cannot enjoy this victory without those people. Are you able to get the context I'm trying to explain?
Yes, Savita. I mean, he's looking for his own personal thing. I mean, how I can be happy, what gives me happiness, what gives me good name. That way he is thinking, like it's just a
Yeah,
common man, what we think right now.
yes, he has forgotten his duty. He is not speaking in terms of his innate nature, which is a true warrior. He is just talking from his personal desire satisfaction point of view. Yetan nahantumichami gnatopi madhusudana api trailokya rajyasya heto kim nu mahi krite. And here he says that I do not wish to kill, though they may kill me, O Madhusudana, even for the sake of domination over the three worlds, how much less for the sake of earth. So here he is becoming too much in the sense that he says, whatever, Apitrilokya Rajasya. He is like,
Saint-like feeling. Yeah.
the saint-like feeling, a renunciation kind of feeling. He says to Krishna, Madhusudana here conveys that he is the slayer of demon Madhu. So he killed Madhu, a demon called Madhu, and that's why Lord Krishna is termed as Madhusudana. And the significance here is that because he has killed many people, he is indirectly telling Krishna, don't ask me to kill these people. He's indirectly conveying that point of view. But here in the verse, he says that Etanna hantu michami gnatopi Madhusudana. He is ready to get killed. Even though they kill me, I don't want to kill them. Even in the exchange of the three worlds, api trilokya rajyasya. So even in the exchange of three worlds, I don't want to kill them. Then how about the earth? Even you give me three worlds, I am not ready to kill them. When you talk about just being in the earth and killing them, I'm not ready to do that. So he says he is not interested in winning the kingdom and enjoying the pleasures in the verse 32. Then in 33, 34, he says that he is not able to share the profits of victory with his relatives and friends. And then he decides not to fight even in the exchange of the three worlds. So he is in this state. How will I result in killing my gurus or grandfather? He knew everything. He came into the war for fighting them. We saw that burning zeal or that enthusiasm to fight in the verses before he broke down. He was ready to fight. He wanted to see the people against whom he is going to fight. And that's the reason he had asked Krishna to take the chariot and stop it in the middle of the battlefield. And once this emotional component cropped in, he literally started behaving in totally different way from what he was supposed to react or behave. So here the ego I feeling or the materialistic compassion is what making Arjuna speak this way. And he says or he talks here about non-violence, and his non-violence is born out of his ego in the sense his I feeling, his desire that he is not feeling good because there will be no other person to praise him, or there will be no one when he is a king and everyone are died, then there will be no one for his ceremony, or there will be, he cannot have lot of people who really love him or the person who praises him. So that is the reason he is trying to be non-violent. And when we take of Gautama Buddha, he preached ahimsa paramo dharmaha. He preached non-violence. And his non-violence is born out of knowledge or his nature or his personality. So it suits him because it is his personality. This kind of non-violence doesn't suit Arjuna because it is not his personality. His personality is to be a warrior. And being a warrior, he has to have the spirit of the warrior, as we saw in the tennis video that I showed. So any person when you come into a game is just a competitor. It doesn't matter who is against you. To play against someone, you just go and play. In the same way, to fight against anyone, if they have decided to, Arjuna had to come, stand in the middle and only had to fight. But here he says that he don't want to fight. And this is what is the difference between the Daya and Kripa. So he is displaying Kripa, which is the non-violence which is born out of his ego, which is not his personality. But here Daya is what Buddha, the compassion that Buddha had, that he should not be violent to any human being on earth. But Arjuna's stand is not to be non-violent to any human being on earth, but being non-violent to his relatives. So now are you clear with Revati? I think you asked to explain about Daya and Kripa. Is it clear now? The difference between
Yes.
Daya and Kripa?
Yes, Savita.
So it is a compassion. Both mean compassion. That because of compassion, he is feeling that non-violence, or he wants to be non-violent. But the reason for this is different in both the cases. Both are the same. Both are preaching non-violence. And that's why they say that violence is better than the non-violence that is born out of materialistic compassion. So when you have to select between violence and a non-violence, violence and kripa, it is always better to be violent, because that is the nature of the person who is being violent. He is at least behaving as close to his nature. Good or bad is a second thing, but he is aligned to his nature. But here he is deviating from his nature. That is what we need to understand.
Okay, yeah.
निहत्य धार्तराष्ट्रान्नः का प्रीतिस्या जनार्दन पापमेवाश्रयेदस्मान् हत्वैतानाततायिनः. So here he is telling in this verse, by killing the sons of Dhritarashtra, what pleasure can I get, O Janardana? Sin alone will be our gain by killing these people. Again, very, how to say, very emotional, very dramatic words he uses. And in the before, if you see, he says, Dhartarashtrasya Durbuddehe. They are all very evil-minded people. I just want to see the evil-minded people who are standing here in front of me to fight the war. And now he is saying that, what pleasure will I get by killing those people, Janardana? So here again, Janardana is the protector of people, Janardana. And it implies that you are protector of people, Krishna. Being protector of people, why are you asking me to kill? As if he knows everything and Krishna doesn't know anything. He is trying to tell to Krishna, why are you making me fight against them?
A small doubt here.
Yeah.
See, you were comparing Gautama Buddha and Arjuna, right? Like the Daya and Kripa.
Kripa, yeah.
Kripa. But here in the battlefield, Arjuna is feeling that virakti, right? He is feeling so sad and that he has to kill his relatives. But the same virakti only Gautama Buddha also had of war. That's why he renounced his kingdom, right? So both their viraktis are the same, which led to the non-violence.
See, it has led to a trigger happened, and after that, the nature of Gautama Buddha became non-violent. And after throughout his life, he was non-violent. He says here the difference is Arjuna says he doesn't want to kill only his relatives. At every point, he says it always attributed to his swajana, which is the relatives. He is not saying I don't want to fight at all after this in my life. He is always saying my father, my grandfather, my relatives. I don't want to kill only my people.
Okay, clear.
Gautama Buddha got transformed, but after that he preached non-violence throughout his life.
Correct.
No differentiation between anyone. Yeah. I can tell you another small example. If you take off the flowers and the fragrance the flower gives, right? The flower blooms whether a person is there to take the fragrance or not. Even the plant is in the forest or not. That is the concept of Daya. But suppose when we apply perfume and go out, we apply just when we don't want others to smell our smelly body, or whenever we want to smell fresh, then only we apply perfume and go. That is kind of difference. Like only when you feel like you display that quality.
Thanks, Abhita. Very clear. Thank you.
Yeah. Feel free to ask any questions if I am not clear at any point. So coming here, Janardana is the protector of people. And being the protector of people, he indirectly implies, oh Krishna or oh Janardana, you being the protector of people, why are you asking me to fight? And he says he gets the sin. The second point to note here is that in this, he says that papameva shraye dasmat hatvaita nata tainaha. So I will get only sin. Papam is sin. So sin alone will be gained by killing these people. He knows that it is for dharma they are going to fight. And now he is saying that if I kill all those people, it is only sin. Except sin, there will be nothing. And in line to this killing and other things, I just want to bring about two laws. Like Manusmriti is, we can say like the code of conduct or the laws we have in our code. In olden days, it was always the Manusmriti, which defines the code of conduct or ethics of how people should be and what is the punishment that people has to get. And in that Manusmriti, it is defined that an attacking desperado must be killed without hesitation. No sin occurs to the slayer of desperado. This is one of the statement that says that by killing the people who are evil, there will be no sin that occurs. And in one of the Smritis, which was written by sage Vasishtha, he mentions that 6 kind of aggressors, like these are the 6 kind of things that a person does, then he is called an aggressor. And if a person does any one of these, then that person can be killed. And when that person is killed as a punishment, there is no sin that will come because of the action of killing. So one is giving poison, and one is setting fire to the house, and one is to attack with deadly weapons and robbing others' wealth, one who occupies others' land, and abducting women. So these are the 6 points that were given in the Smriti by sage Vasishtha for a person to be defined as an aggressor or a criminal in today's words. And when we see the Kauravas are particularly the main people of the Kauravas have done 1, 2, 3 or almost all of these sins. And if you go through the Smriti, the proper laws itself, it says killing those people has no sinful reaction. But our hero, from which stand he is saying, we don't know. He says that just we will get only sin when we go and kill those people. Tasmannarha vayam hantum dhartarashtraन् svabhandhavan svajanam hi katam hatva sukhinashyama madhava. So tasmat here in Sanskrit means therefore. So when do we use therefore? To conclude. So he is now concluding the statement. Therefore, we shall not kill the sons of Dhritarashtra, our relatives. For how can we be happy? By killing our own people, Madhava. So he told his reasons, and now he is concluding himself. And Madhava here refers to the husband or goddess of fortune. Again, he refers Krishna as Madhava because being a person of fortune, oh Madhava, don't bring misfortune to me by asking me to kill these people. So that is the context here used. And here tasmat, as I said, is therefore. Therefore comes for any conclusions. We have kind of statements and we draw inferences or conclusions based upon the premises that we have defined. In the same way, he is proceeding or by a series of facts and logical arguments. And what is his conclusion now? It's wrong to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra. And what is the arguments he made? First, in the verse 31, he told he is seeing adverse omens. He says he is not desiring for victory, nor kingdom, nor pleasures. And he says that with whom will I enjoy my victory and the kingdom? And he also says that I do not want to kill them in return of 3 worlds, meaning that he is very saintly. He is renouncing, that he is not looking for pleasures. And finally, he says that because I accrue only sin by killing these people, I don't want to kill. I don't want to fight against them. If a conclusion is correct or drawn logically by a proper, here it doesn't, Arjuna's statements doesn't have any kind of logic, depth, and direction. And so the conclusion he is drawing is not actually a very strong conclusion. So for you, until seeing here, do you feel that his conclusion is worth? From the logical statements, it's like if you ask your kids, if a kid has not done the homework, what will the kid, the kid will not first tell that he did not do the homework. He'll start saying, I don't want to go to school because I got stomachache. And you'll say, oh, stomachache, let's go to doctor. No, 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 not really stomachache. No, I want to sleep for some time. I feel like I don't want to go to school. Then, no, I feel like throwing up. So if you go on giving, if it is really a valid reason, always see there will be only one. There won't be multiple reasons that needs to be shared for one conclusion if it is a real or the truth. But here, even after giving these many reasons, we don't find that this is logical because these are not actually a logical reasoning that he has done. Do we see with our kids, or we can see in a general word, if you ask someone who is just saying to escape, this is a complete escapism. Do you agree, or do you have any other views?
He's trying to justify his emotional confusion. He has an emotional turmoil, but he's trying to justify logically, but it is not adding up.
It's not adding up. Yes, he's trying to justify it, but this justification shows his escapism towards his duty. When I meant escapism, I meant to say that he is deviating from his duty. So for a student, if you see, his duty is to go to school. And if they want to be escapists and not do that for that day, they will come up with lot of reasonings, which for them, when they say, it will be very innocent and logical. But if we are also smart, we can easily find out if that is the actual reason or not. So this is not
we also do this many times. We we take decisions emotionally, but we try and justify logically.
Yeah. So when you try to do that, you will get lot. Even for our own acts, if you try and see that you go to a shop, you bought a sari for no reason or something, then after buying, you will start, okay, I can wear it for the next festival, or okay, I can wear it for this marriage. There was no need for buying that, but you bought it. So we ourselves, that is just for a mental satisfaction. That's actually not the fact. You had a craving to do that. You just did it without giving a real thought. It was more of impulsive thing. But after doing that, because our mind we always want to feel that we are correct. Our mind, when we say I meant our mind always wants to feel that it is always doing the correct thing. It is okay. It has to be happy. That's why it will try to find out all these kinds of reasons to satisfy itself.
So there will be any guilt feeling also because of that also we give any reasons? When we do something which we are not supposed to do, we deviate from our thing, what we have to do. If we don't do, even the guilt also make us give all the excuses.
No, if you are guilty, it's actually a negative feeling only, right? Because of guilt, even though you don't give reasons to satisfy your mind. Guilt itself is a negative feeling which you have to try to overcome. Because
okay,
the
then
mind
we
is
don't
not
explain
satisfied
anyone.
only, you are getting guilt. Guilt comes because your mind and intellect had a fight.
Okay.
That's
so
when
here
the guilt
there is
comes
no
up.
guilt feeling, right? For Arjuna, there is no guilt feeling here. It's only escapism.
But here he doesn't actually feel guilty in the sense like he is actually trying to see that he is projecting himself like a philosopher now.
Right.
It's not, he has not done any action to feel guilt for. When will guilt come? After doing the action.
Okay,
He has not
correct.
done the action yet.
Okay. After realizing, you feel the guilt, yeah.
Yeah.
He's not in the state of realization.
Yeah. Guilt comes after action. Guilt never comes before action.
Okay, got it.
Here now he is giving his philosophy. He now became a philosopher to Krishna. And this is a short story that I read in one of the book. In that, there will be a saint who always comes to a pond and he keeps on watching the pond for 1 hour and he goes back home. And there will be a watchman in the nearby house. He will be seeing this happening every day. So he will go to the watchman or the saint and ask, Swamiji, every day you are coming here. and you are going, what are you actually seeing? Then the Swamiji will get a bit shocked and say, no one asked me question till now. And I also never asked myself this question. Thank you for asking me this. I'll pay you what you are getting more than from the God. So every day I come here, you just trigger me this question. Why have you come here, or what are you doing here? So many of times when we do our things mechanically, we lack clarity of actions. We never ask ourselves, why are we doing things? What is the intent for doing this? Is this action creating trouble to anyone, or is this act helping me in any way? We never be a witness to our actions most of the times in this autopilot mode whenever we are doing. We just do the things because we are doing. And this is the first step to strengthen your intellect. We have to be clear in our actions. Reasoning is the only way by which your intellect can be strengthened. Without reasoning, you can not strengthen your intellect. As a physical exercise, mentally, for each of your action, you have to be a witness to your action and analyze yourself. And the toughest thing is, it's very easy to be a witness after doing your actions. You can always analyze your actions after doing it. But what we need to practice is to bring that analysis when we are doing that action. And that strengthens your intellect. Every time, whenever you do, while doing itself, get a clarity. Before doing itself, you have clarity, well and good. But after doing, it's okay. You can try and get a clarity before doing that action, or while doing this action, why we are doing that action. And this, I think we have studied in the 2 or 3 classes before. I think we saw that we have the 3 stages of mind in the human brain. One of them, the lowest level, is an animal kind of behavior that we do instinctively. And the middle one is the human behavior, which is the Arjuna stage, and the divine behavior where we act with clarity. When we act with clarity, we transcend the human state of act, regret, and repent. When we say act with clarity, it is an act that is approved by your intellect. When we have to be very simple, you act with as per your whims and fancies of your mind, that is acting at a human level. Where you act, most of the time, mind settles for instant gratification, and most of the times it might not be the, I don't say all of the times, most of the times it might not be the right thing. And that's why we act, we regret, we repent, and the confusion, the stress, everything starts when we are in the human stage. So when we say the divine stage, here the examples in the battlefield, we can say that Bhishma and Dronacharya are in that stage. Don't they know all the philosophy that Arjuna is talking? Or those saintly person don't know? But why are they ready to fight against him? Because they know what is the purpose of fighting. Why are they supporting Kauravas? They know their reasons clearly, and they know what is their duty, what is that they have to do because of their obligations. And that's why they have not gone into any confusion. And people like Bhima, who is in the animal stage, in the mental state of animal stage, meaning being very instinctive and just acting without any kind of thinking. He doesn't think at all. He is a person of action. He just acts. That's why he doesn't have any regrets or repents for his action. And it's generally said that the human state of mind is like a bridge. And one side we have the divinity or the divine play, and one side we have the animal state of mind. Most of us are in this bridge, and you cannot always stand on this bridge. There is a gravitational pull which is more onto the animal side, and to come to the divine side, you have to put a lot of effort, a lot of effort. So to come from, we will try to surpass the animal stage, come into the human stage. And again, to stay in the divine stage is the toughest thing until we master that kind of equanimity of our mind. I'll tell you example, even in the personal case for me also, I always try to think that I should not lose my temper. I should not lose my temper. So I will be contemplating on this thought when I travel to office, when I come back and all will be good for certain period of time. And sometimes the kids test our patience. They are the best people for you to change your personality. So when they test the patience at one level, that will go, and the amount of anger you show at that particular point of time will be worse than the 20 hours of composure you had. Does this happen to all of you? Have you experienced such scenarios?
Yeah, I can completely relate.
Yes, Savita.
And then goes that cycle of that repent,
Yeah.
feel bad, and then
So that is our state.
Very
Why?
true.
Because there is nothing wrong in that, because animal state, we have come from animals and we are trying to be, human birth is given to us to achieve the divinity. We have transcended the animal stage and taken the life of human being. Every human being has born here to realize the divinity and to achieve the divine state. As we have come from animals, the pull, it is like the gravitational pull. We have more pull towards the state of the animal. That's why whenever we give out, all the effort goes for a vain and we get pulled back into that state quite easily and quite intensively as well. And that's the reason it's okay. That is the nature. So nothing to feel about it, but learn from what has happened and see what is the trigger. How can you manage it better? And that's the reason no one can understand human beings. I'll tell you a short story that it's a funny story and also a very moral story. So there was a father on his first month of salary. They had a glass cup in their house. So his son, while playing, breaks the glass cup. That was the first day of his month and he got his salary. So that father was in a very, very happy mood. So the son breaks it and he does not say anything to the son. He just says that it's okay, and he tells his wife, why are you keeping all this glass stuff in the house? See, kids are breaking it. So that guy, normally this guy will like give left and right if something happens in the house, and that child will think that, oh, my dad has become like Gautama Buddha today, he's very nice, he did not scold anything. So the wife also goes and just keeps the glass by sticking or by putting a tape. She will just fix it and keep it there. Then the end of the month comes where he has exhausted all his money. It's just to show that he's in a state of frustration, or he's in a state of a state where his mind is not really in a very good mood. So the same broken glass, which his wife has kept it there, he just touches it and it falls down. And there he gives him left and right, and the child goes perplexed. What happened? Just 2-3 weeks before he was saintly, and now for the broken glass he is reacting like that. And that's the same with us. No one can really know how we react except us, because our internal environment is totally known only to us. Unless they come and strike a conversation with us or do an action with us, they really don't know whether we are in the animal state or the divine state. So any questions still here? These were the verses for today that I have planned.
no questions, Sabita. This is very clear. And the mood you were saying that I can relate. Nearing my periods, how my mood is, and the
Yeah,
other days
and
the
for
same
us,
thing
yeah.
happens. How
For
my
us, I
mood.
think our husbands are very much, they must very much understand the hormonal imbalance. And I think even my husband keeps away from that, or even I try to keep away. There's nothing wrong in that. I tell that I have a lot of mood swings. Please don't come to me for anything. This is the time I will blast. I know I cannot uphold my composure because of the PMS or whatever it could be, that
Yeah.
hormonal changes happening. So one thing, when you know the trigger, try to manage how you can go around with the trigger. The problem is when you don't really know the trigger. But the point to understand is we have to strive, because our human life is to cross the bridge and go to the other side. Let it take how many ever times, but we have started this journey of spirituality. Let us make use of this life to cross the bridge and make a stable stay on the other side without coming back to the stage. So any questions still here?
No, Rita.
No, Abhita, we are good. I'm good at least.
Okay.
So Arjuna will be like this in state for how long? I mean, this is the end. I mean,
No, the
when he
first
will
chapter
realize.
completely is Vishada until
Oh,
the
okay.
10th verse of second chapter. You will come to know like when
Okay,
actually you will be answered. That is
Okay.
all dependent on the mental state of Arjuna.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So still now when the next verses he will totally be a super philosopher now. Now he was telling only one side of philosophy. In the other shlokas next week when we see, he will tell totally a different set of things.
Okay.
Yeah. So after this, I just wanted to share a bit on few things, my experiences from the last week. So first to start off with emotions and feelings. This is what we learned from the emotional intelligence study. So we all know we generally interchange the words emotions and feelings. But if you have to really understand what is an emotion and what is a feeling, emotion is something that comes naturally with a physical change. And feeling is the meaning that you give to the emotion. And emotions are aroused before feelings. Emotions will change our physical states. Emotions can be observed by any of the physical reaction. And here when we say Arjuna's state of emotions also we saw because of his emotional state, he had given all the changes that was happening like my body is shivering, all these physical changes he told. And this originates in the limbic system of the brain and it normally lasts for certain amount of time. Emotions are not long lived. Emotions will come and if you feel the emotions and release it, it will be gone. But after that, what stays for a longer time is the feeling you give to that emotion. For example, I suddenly see a snake. The emotion that stuck to me is fear because it's Sharon flight and fight state, it's fear. But when I pause for a minute and I think and I say that's not a poisonous snake, I should not be worried about it, then the feeling changes to it's okay. That state of fear changes to a it's okay state. So feelings are totally under our control. What we can choose is the feelings. You cannot choose emotions because they are natural and instinctive. What we have command over or capability to choose is just our feelings. You can choose feelings and feelings can be hidden. That's why we really don't know what you are feeling from inside. You might not like a person, but you might have that grudge inside, but smiling face outside. But emotions cannot be hidden because it comes with a physical change. Like suppose if you are emotionally disturbed by some person, there will be any kind of physical change happening depending upon your way you respond. Like for some people near the ears it starts to sweat or you tend to make your hand movements, leg movements. It all differs from person to person, but for sure it will be associated with a physical change. Why I'm telling this is I think most of you might have known that my dad passed away last Saturday, exactly after taking this class, couple of hours after taking this class. So the next Sunday, my emotions, I actually broke down because it was all of a sudden, unexpected. And yeah, the Sunday was a bit tough for me to take things. And after getting a proper guidance from few of my spiritual friends, and when you analyze actually the reason for the happenings, and that's why it is important is the subconscious conditioning, why we are doing all these things, why do we affirm, Why do you affirm? Because till this time you had a lot of preconceived notions that has wired your subconscious mind. The same thing from the childhood, whatever feelings I had on death, on the rituals that has to happen because of death, was conditioned before in a different way. But after this spirituality, or at least this Bhagavad Gita second chapter, I fairly had an idea or the subconscious mind conditioning of what is truth, what is life, what is death, what is temporary, what is permanent. So there has been a conditioning in my subconscious mind for quite some time. When I started to associate my subconscious mind, the feelings that I had after my emotions were completely exhausted, my feelings started to change. I no more felt sad about the event, because when you see the event from the term of the truth from the nature, there is nothing to worry about it. There was nothing to worry about it, because that is something that is totally out of anyone's control. No one can tell when a person is going to leave us. When we have no control on this, and when we know actually what the things are, why are things happening, and as I said, the law of causation, everyone, what is happening to us is just because of our own karmas. And I'm a person who believe in the law of causation or the law of karma. So there is nothing to blame anyone, or there is nothing to feel anything that this has happened this way. If this is happening this way, you don't know what you did in the previous life. So that is why you have to go along this life with experiences without labeling them. So there should not be any kind of labeling that I am experiencing a bad thing or I am experiencing a good thing. Don't label, get along with your life's experiences, unlabeling with acceptance and complete surrender to the Supreme. And this one also I wanted to share. After this, one of my friends, I always have a belief in the guiding force. I think of something, I sleep with something, I get an answer in some way or the other. So the next day, one of my friend called me, and she passed me a book called Life After Death, which is written by Sri Sri. This was a beautiful book, which I did not have much idea of what is this total concept about. So it's given so beautifully that once you read and you have a belief in the reincarnation or the subtle word, if you have a belief in that, and if you read this book, you will come to an understanding that this is a beautiful experience. And this statement particularly felt me very motivating, that if someone deaths become instrumental for increasing the level of consciousness in everyone, then the credit goes to the dead person. What better condolences can one offer to the dead person? Make death an opportunity to learn rather than wasting it in crying. So this I felt very motivating, and I every day now see my dad's photo and just thank him for increasing my spiritual levels by this experience, because this is an experience. Even though I have theoretical knowledge, I would not have known how I would deal with this situation until I encounter this. Because hearing the death of other people, like in the same Arjuna's situation, being a warrior fighting against everyone is different, and being a warrior fighting against your own people is different. So when it comes to the passing away of your loved ones, the emotions, the way you react, everything will be different. And when I am able to kind of understand things and understand why, the main thing that I was actually not very comfortable about was me and my brother, both of us were not able to go there. And the rites and rituals were not performed properly because of these challenging situations. But after reading this book, I really understood what is the reason behind every ritual. And based upon that understanding, I was able to do the things I can do here through my thoughts. And for everyone, thoughts are the most powerful instruments that we have. So use the power of thoughts from the place where you are for healing, for sending any kind of messages or anything. And from the experience I had, I totally understood that death is just a transformation, and it takes you still, your life continues into a beautiful state. And that's how I explain my kids. When that also was given to me by some of my friends to educate kids on what is death, and they explain it very beautifully, that how the cloud dies and gives water, and that rainwater comes and nourishes the land, and again a plant arises. So it is a cycle. Your life continues like that. There should be death for the life to progress further. So death is not a taboo. We have to do it with acceptance. I know it's hard, but that's the truth.